Hey, it's Chris here from River Troutfitters, and we do a lot of fly tying videos here on our YouTube channel because we do love to tie our own flies. And this video today is about demystifying the tools and the gear that you need to get started doing this yourself. Store-bought flies are fantastic. I mean, they're a great way to get patterns that will work on your home waters, but there's a lot to be said for catching a fish on something that you've created yourself, the pride and sense of accomplishment that comes with that. As well, when you tie your own flies, you get to express yourself creatively, you get to try and experiment with different patterns that might actually match the insects and the bugs that you have in your own home waters more accurately. It's a lot of fun, it's a great hobby as well, and we're going to talk about the tools and the gear that you need to get started. Now the first piece of equipment you're going to need is a good vise to hold the flies steady. Now this is a great example of an entry-level vise. This is Renzetti Apprentice. It's got solid jaws that can hold quite a good variety of different hook sizes, and it's a very simple setup. Now I tied flies on something like this for many years. It works very well. You can rotate the fly around in different angles, but it doesn't rotate the fly on axis with the vise itself. This is something you get in a more expensive vise. If we look at the Renzetti Traveler here, it has these angled jaws, and when I rotate the fly, it stays right on axis with the center of rotation. Now this lets you do some nice stuff. You can wind materials onto the hook very efficiently and very quickly, and something like this is great if you want to take your fly tying to a next level. Now another thing to look for is how the vise actually attaches to the table. So this is the Renzetti Apprentice with a C-clamp. Now this is a really nice option because it makes the vise very solid and sturdy. If you are traveling with it though, you're going to need to find an appropriate tabletop that you can secure this with. Now this is the Renzetti Traveler again, and this is using just a heavy weighted base. I do like this, and I use this on my desk at home. It's still a pretty stable surface, but I do like that I can travel with this, set it up on any flat surface, and start tying right away. Now there's tons of other vise accessories and different kinds of vises for specialized applications like tube fly vises and stuff, but that's beyond the scope of this particular entry-level video. But I don't want you to feel like you have to spend a ton of money. I mean, Renzettis are really good quality for the price. The Apprentice like this is $150 Canadian, and if you go up to the non-anodized version of the Traveler 2000 series, you're only looking at $250, and it might very well be the last vise you ever need to buy. Now an absolutely essential piece of kit is your thread bobbin. This is the device that actually holds the thread and dispenses it out so that you can tie it onto your fly. And this is really personal choice because you need to get a bobbin that's comfortable for you to hold, that fits your hand, you know, something like the weight of, but there's more to it than that. First off, there's different sizes of bobbins. Some people prefer smaller bobbins if they're tying smaller flies. You feel they can get more precision and finer movements. I've always been fine with just a standard bobbin myself. But what I do find really important is how much tension it puts on the thread. Now a lot of bobbins will just use metal spring tension, and that can be fine. This is an Orvise bobbin though, and this actually, hopefully you can see that here, this actually uses a spring loaded inside the bobbin, and if I pull the thread out, it then wants to naturally bring it back up. Now regardless, whatever bobbin you use, thread tension is important. If it's too tight, when you're winding thread on, it's going to be a chore, and you might even break really delicate thread without even wanting to because there's too much drag on that. If it's too loose though, you'll find that gravity is going to make the bobbin fall to the bottom of the vise. This can be really annoying. You get slack in the line, it starts to unravel on the fly. So you want to find a bobbin that's really going to fit how you like to tie, and that might take a few different versions and brands to try before you find the one. Now when you're ready to work with deer hair and elk hair, you're going to need a hair stacker, and this lets you put the hair in there, tap it a few times, and it gets all the tips to line up evenly. And we're going to show you that on our channel as well. Now this is a Renzetti hair stacker, and I like that it's got foam on the bottom because if it doesn't have foam and you bang it on the table, it sounds like this. And if it does have foam, it sounds like this. And if there's other people living in the house, they're going to appreciate that foam. Now the next thing you're going to need is a good pair of fly tying scissors, or maybe 2 or maybe 3, because there's so many different varieties out there. Now for example, these are very small, short bladed scissors. You can see that there. This is great for precision work or working with small flies, you know, shaky hands. These can be really nice to have. Now, this is a pair of hair scissors, and the difference here is that there's serrations right on the blade, and these are quite prominent serrations. Now, what that's really good for is when you're cutting fibers or deer hair, for example, as you're cutting the material, the serrations will grab that hair, keep them from getting pushed out of the scissors or sliding away. So that can be a really nice pair of scissors to have. This is a good general purpose pair of scissors. I use these myself. This is a 5-inch pair of razor scissors. The serrations are there, but they're a little bit smaller, so they might not be as effective with hair, but the razor scissors are very sharp, and you can even cut things like thread and materials just using one edge like a knife. I also do like that these have an adjustable tension on them. I can loosen these off, and then they're a little bit more comfortable to use. There's less friction. That's really nice. And then I can tighten them down if I feel that I need something a bit more precise. Now, I personally prefer scissors that have those micro serrations, but they are very difficult to sharpen, and I exacerbate that issue by cutting hard wire and stuff like that with my good pair of scissors, and that's actually really bad for the edge of them. You can get scissors like this that have little wire cutters built in, and I do recommend that, or of course you can always use a cheap pair of scissors or pliers or something, wire cutters, to do all that work instead if you're smart, unlike me. But you can also get scissors that don't have any micro serrations on the blade. Now, what is nice about those is you can resharpen them yourselves with scissor sharpeners, but you might find that they're a little bit tricky to use with different hair products. And again, in the end, it's really about maybe getting a few scissors for different kinds of tasks for the flies that you're tying. But I personally find I can make one good pair of scissors do pretty much everything I need them to do. So that's a lot of the main tools that you're going to need to start with out of the way, but I want to quickly touch on some more specialized equipment. Now, this is a dubbing loop tool, and we use this when we want to create a dubbing loop and a thicker body for bait fish flies and things like that. This is from Loon, and this is my personal favorite, but there's many on the market, and we have a YouTube video showing you how to use this for that technique. Now, here's a tool that I didn't buy for a long time, for many years. These are Hackle Pliers, and they're helpful for winding hackle around the hook, especially if it's a really small fly. I used my fingers for a long time, but there are some situations where this is essential. You can also do this. Now, as much as we love to sell tools in the fly shop, this next one is something you can probably DIY with household materials. You need some sort of comb or brush. Often we're going to have a lot of hairs and fibers, and we need to clean out some of the under fur from those materials. Now, this is a great thing to buy, but you probably have something that you use on your teeth laying around the house already that works pretty well for that.
Hey, baby, have you seen my toothbrush?
No. No, I haven't. Now, I also like to use something like a stiff wire brush at home that I can use to rough up some of the fibers on the fly and really give it a more buggy appearance. This stuff is absolutely essential. Now, this is something you can buy in the shop, but you can also find a lot of this stuff around the hardware store, or I personally just use a rifle bore cleaner. It's very similar to this, and it does wonders for that. But you know what? Sticky Velcro on the end of a popsicle stick, that also works great. So you can DIY a lot of this stuff at home and save yourself a bit of money. Now, this tool here is a very simple one called a Bodkin, but it's effectively just a needle-shaped piece of metal, and you can absolutely DIY a lot of objects around the house to replace this, but they're surprisingly useful. Now, first off, we use this needle-shaped object to pick fibers out on a fly or very delicately separate fibers from each other, but it's also great when you want to apply glue onto the threads of your fly when you're finally done. A lot of head cements and glues come with a brush applicator, but it's quite broad, and it usually works well on large flies with large heads. But if you're working with a really tiny fly, this is a great tool to dip into the glue and apply exactly where you need it. Now, at the end of tying a fly, you need to secure the thread so it doesn't unravel all that hard work that you just did. And what a lot of people like to do is use their fingers and just do a couple half-hitch knots to secure it. But I personally like these tools. This is a whip finishing tool. There's many different varieties, but they all basically do the same thing. There's a little bit of a technique involved. It's not too hard. And we actually have a video on our YouTube channel showing you how to do a whip finish knot with one of these tools. But I find it's just a quick, easy way to secure that thread at the end before you finally glue it in place with head cement. Okay, I know there was a lot of information to throw at you, but we really did get a good look at all the tools we need to get started on our fly tying journey. And as we've been talking about throughout this whole video, we have a lot of other videos showing you specifically how to do things like stack hair with a hair stacker or build a dubbing loop properly, other fly tying techniques. There's lots of examples of flies that we like to tie, so you can follow along and make those yourself. And we're gonna have a lot more information on the channel coming as well, talking about the materials that you need. So stick around and you're gonna get all the info that you are looking for. Thanks so much for joining us. Please leave comments below. Let us know what you think, or if you have any questions, we'd love to answer those. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you again very soon. Check out those materials and tools on BoRiverTroutfitters.com.